Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's Senza Fili Sparring Partners webinar, Driving Innovation in the Middle East. Our speakers today are Tareq Amin, CEO of Aramco Digital, and Monica Paolini, Principal at Senza Fili. I'm Kendra Chamberlain, and I will be moderating our webinar today. In Sparring Partners, we watch our speakers discuss a topic live on video. We'd like to encourage our audience to participate in the conversation. So please share your comments and questions using the Q&A button at the bottom the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom taskbar. And our speakers will do their best to address questions as they go along and as they become relevant to the topics being discussed. All comments are visible to all participants, so please keep the conversation polite and respectful. With that, I'll hand it over to Monica.
Kendra, thank you so much for the introduction, and as always, it's a pleasure to be here. Today I have Tareq Amin with me, who recently joined Aramco Digital. Let me first sort of say, why do we have a whole sparring partner talk for a whole hour on the Middle East? And the reason why I'm interested in doing this is because we often, both in the US and in Western Europe, look at our markets, and maybe sometimes Japan, China, South Korea, but we don't spend too much time looking at what's going on in the rest of the world. And there is often a lot of interesting stuff going on, and the Middle East is a part of it. And Tareq is a perfect person to talk about it because he recently moved from Japan to Saudi, and he's been in the US, so he has a wide view, so he can tell us what's going on and what's different, what's new. Now, Tareq needs no introduction, but nevertheless, I'm going to give one because it's quite amazing. I've known Tareq since he was a geo a while ago, and then he went and worked at Rakuten, where most of you probably follow his work on Open RAN and generally on the whole network. But before that, he has been working at Amdocs, Huawei, T-Mobile. So he has a really broad. And the reason why I'm saying this is that Tareq can introduce himself. But when I saw that he joined Aramco Digital, I said, whoa. I would have, if I had to guess, I would have guessed all sorts of things, but not that. And not the Middle East. So I think that we can, talk today about that and what is he doing there? What's the differences? There's a lot. And we look forward to your questions as always, anyway. So with that said, I think, Tareq, why don't you introduce yourself the way you think it's more appropriate than when I do.
Thank you very much.
By the way, Tareq had the honor, we had the honor to have Tareq as the first guest on Inclusively. And we talked about inclusivity and diversity, and we might touch on that today as well. And I'm going to send the link because that was a great conversation. So Tareq, tell us.
Very much, Monica. Well, first of all, thank you for your kind introduction. I mean, I think irrespective of what I have done in my life, I would say I've always been passionately trying to explore more than technology, cultures, people, and always have an open-minded about how I approach geographies and areas I live. I think you started this conversation, rightfully so. Living in the US, I lived all my life almost in the US. I immigrated from, I was born in Amman, Jordan, but I immigrated in 1990 to the US. I lived there for almost all my life until I got the hunger to start doing a bit of international exploration in India and in Japan and now in Saudi Arabia. But, frankly speaking, if I reflect back before we talk about relevant topics and subjects around technology, is the human element of understanding others' culture. While I lived in the US, I would say I might have had a one-sided view about how people are and how technology is in certain areas. And certainly coming, to the kingdom here was a deliberate choice. I wanted to really reconnect back and understand what is happening here, and to have my own perspective around the journey of development, the journey of progress, and the desire for societies to move into more of a digital platforms and solutions, and compare that to the rest of the world that I lived in. So that my starting point in looking at Saudi Arabia was one of really extreme curiosity, and I've looked maybe from the outside in, and I never lived in the Middle East, to be frank with you, until recently. Certainly not worked here, and it is out of sheer desire to understand what is happening here. I've heard a lot of great things and mega projects around Vision 2030 in the kingdom, and I really wanted to be part of this journey. So this was one of the key factors that drove me, Monica, to take on this challenge. And it is, honestly speaking, as we talk today, you and everybody that's listening to this call probably will appreciate the magnitude of the challenge to build the vision and the ambition of what we're trying to do in Aramco Digital.
Yeah, and this is really fascinating because, most of the people that we know that are based in the US or Europe, they obviously travel extensively, but oftentimes it's very easy to just focus on your market, and not to see. And what I have learned, before I actually moved there, like in the last few years, is that there's so much going on in the Middle East, because it's a really, it's an interesting place, because there is less legacy, there is some funding available, there is a need. So there are sort of a good conditions for everything to happen.
Yeah, I think, Monica, the way I will tell you, when I arrived in Saudi Arabia, I mean, the first thing that I was, before we address the technology component of this, number one, I was like, I really love the society. The people are welcoming. I felt so much welcomed into the culture, the fabric, the DNA, the hospitality. So there was basic things of society that I really, really enjoyed my first few days here. The second I noticed, which is something really interesting, as I started to get my legal documents in order, I was shocked about the level of adoption and transformation that happened within the government itself to allow expats like myself to be onboarded and be self-onboarded. I would tell you, almost now everything in the government sector is managed through digital platform, mobile apps, and I honestly got my residency in almost a day. If you think about license application and even post office, all of these basic fundamental things that we would require as individuals, I mean, that was my biggest surprise, is how fast they have adopted new technology. I think this is largely, as you said, maybe a lot of it is the element of, well, they're starting really for not a whole lot of legacy that exists. Number two is a clear vision that's been articulated by the Saudi government, and a very, very solid execution plan to say, look, we need to do this. And the benefits to individual and society is significant. As COVID has hit, it just created a trigger to fast move all of the adoption and acceleration of a significant number of digital transformation across all government sectors. So that was my immediate observation, is how easy it has been for someone like me that haven't lived here in a long time to really apply for the various documentations you would need to live in a place, and for me to be able to live like as a member of this society. So I would tell you that was a big surprise for me. I mean, I'm expecting, honestly, I thought I would go in and it's going to take me months and months and months to obtain all the necessary documentation. So that's on the government sector. On Aramco side, not Aramco Digital, even Aramco as the parent company, when you think about, this is best in class when it comes to what I consider oil gas exploration. Another thing that shocked me, I'm not coming from this vertical, as you know. I mean, I've really never worked in this sector, but I cannot explain to you the enthusiasm that I'm having to learn about things I have never learned about. So in the in a traditional sense, terminologies, if I tell you, oh, they are, they're doing magnificent on upstream. Like, what does upstream means? It's the process of taking oil and description of oil from ground. You would think that this is a manual process today. And what I found out is a significant amount of the work requires a massive compute infrastructure to do the AI simulation, to simulate seismic activity, to predict exactly where you drill, to precise extraction of oil reservoirs. So the more and more I dug into it, the more I understood how much digital platforms have been enabled in a business like Aramco today. And honestly, as we looked at Aramco Digital, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Aramco, I thought this is what a great opportunity to really now leverage some of this, heritage of large industry background, and to start building the foundation and the platforms of what tomorrow might look like in a true digital society, a digital enterprise, and looking at a future industry transformation outside of what I would consider what we would have talked before in the past is mostly about telecom. But today, I will give yourself and maybe the people listening to this call a preview about the other facets that connectivity, cloud, AI, data touches a vertical like oil and gas and industry in general. So it's been really a journey of learning so far and a journey of exploration. And I have nothing but pleasant surprises to share with everybody. I mean, it's really been a remarkable a few months that I've been here. It's a good surprise.
Absolutely. And I guess, as I said, a lot of it was unexpected. Now, before we get into the sort of the more technology thing, let's just talk a little bit about the sort of society. So recently there was this college student, and she was looking for a job, tried to get her to go into telecoms. And I suggested that she applied to Saudi because that's such a great place. But then I thought, as a woman, is it still,
Yeah.
so I know you care about diversity and inclusion, and it worked for you, but would it work, you think, in the same way? And,
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, I mean, if you look at Saudi in the last 5 years, and like any other society that's evolving, developing, and with amazing leadership that I have seen in place from the government, my first thing that happened when I arrived into Aramco Digital and I looked at my own organization, my chief people officer, Diana, if you see her in the office, she's thriving. I think she is one of the best HR heads that I've had in a time, So the more I talk to her, the more you could see the sense of transformation, because I know maybe at earlier dates, some of the challenges that she as a female would have had today. There is some staggering statistics that are actually factual. 36% and higher of the IT and security staff today in the organizations is females. So females here, I find them, to be very frank with you, extremely smart in topics that I would have not expected. And maybe I should not say this. I said in cybersecurity segment, I find their capability and their intuition and their mathematical background pretty impressive. So you see women driving in the road normally. What I would tell you in general, and this is really, really important for everybody to know, when I went to India, my first time, maybe this might, actually before India, first true international cultural experience I had working with Huawei in China. One thing I learned quickly is we might have different of opinions about how we should live in life. But I decided to take a path where maybe my first thing that would come my mind, that no matter how different I think about how things should be done, I must respect the culture that I'm working with. It does not always necessarily that means I have to really accept everything. However, we must accept that we are of different worlds. We must accept that we've been raised differently. We must accept that our value system might be different, and that's okay, as long as there are some fundamental units that we operate in. So whether in China or India or Japan, I thought each culture really brings amazing things. And as a foreigner coming here, I'm not in a position to say, well, this is how I lived and this is how you should live. So in Saudi Arabia specifically, I mean, I look at females now really have the freedoms to come into the workplace the way they feel like, the capability to contribute and feel like they are a valuable member of society. I am encouraging very heavily. If I look at my leadership team, I said to them, I need more people than Diana to be on my leadership team, and there is no pushback as such to say, this is a male, this is female. I mean, at least in my environment, I have not really observed any issues that would trigger concern from anybody that's listening to this for females to come and consider working in Saudi Arabia. Hopefully, if you are of the right credential, I would love to hire you in Aramco Digital. So it's changing, and it's changing fast, and the country is advancing at a phenomenal rate from what I have seen just a few months I'm here. And of course, if you look in the last 5 years, it's just a remarkable transformation.
Absolutely. So now I feel good that I did suggest, apply for Saudi, even though I know it might sound kind of like, and I guess, you're right. We need to embrace the fact that, I mean, that's the whole point of diversity, is not to force everybody to do the same, because otherwise what's the point of diversity, is to accept the diversity in other people. Okay, so why don't we get started and talk about what is that you saw in general from a technology point of view in Saudi, in the Middle East, and then we can go and talk more specifically about what you're doing at Aramco Digital, which is a new thing within a new.
Well, look, I mean, across the board, I would tell you when, the first thing that you would observe when you land anywhere, of course, the process of airport. Let's talk about that first, because that's an indication, especially if this is the first time you come to anywhere, any place. I think maybe it's an indication to how things progress. So when I applied for my visa in Saudi Arabia, I went to the government website, an e-visa, and my first thing that I noticed, I'm like, wow, 3 seconds later I have an approval. So I mean, just think about this process. A process I was told was taking like months of approvals to now a simple process where documentation is supplied online and real-time decision-making is made online. It's really good. And it was very, very responsive. So in terms of reactiveness of the systems I interacted with and the responses from them to the relationship of this case of my e-visa, that was the first time I arrived here. I went to the airport, but talk about diversity. By the way, the officers at the airport that greeted me was a female officer. So that was a good thing to see, because I did not expect that. I entered almost actually in less than a minute. I was clearing the immigration line. Point is, I guess I've seen a lot of changes to see that the airport process, the process of digitization and enabling system to make ease of travel better. There is no doubt in my mind that this country understood clearly the value of digital platforms. And when you look at what has been published in Saudi Arabia about Vision 2030, it is really underpinned by moving the society into a new diversification stream. Digital is being a huge part of it, a huge element of what you need to it. And if you look at these mega projects, whether it is NEOM and other parts of these mega projects that are happening in Saudi Arabia, the essence of all of them is all about connected society. It's about data and AI. It's about compute infrastructure. It is about building a world-class connectivity that links the society with the application layer, if you will, that's on top of this of these platforms. So in general, I think the Middle East is going through a faster adoption rate than anywhere I have seen. Their starting point, they had the big advantage. Yes, there was very well funded, but having money alone, by the way, doesn't give you what you want, right? You have to have an absolutely audacious vision, and then have the hunger and desire to take an audacious vision and move into an execution strategy. And if you look at, all the way from the Crown Prince here and the leadership, the team that existed in Saudi Arabia, they're really convicted into this belief that they want to change the fabric of society, move into a more inclusive digital platforms, build amazing places where people could thrive and create new ideas and new innovation. So honestly, my first impression has been really, really positive, and I'm seeing, in Saudi Arabia and the Gulf region in general, a significant adoption to new digital platforms that are intended to ease the day-to-day life of the average consumers, and also make sure that the country is really being built to support new digital growth areas outside of traditional business.
But sort of that begs the question is that, okay, they have the vision, everybody could have the vision, so why is it there? And one thing that, if you look at it, I mean, from the outside, I would think is that the fact that they might have less legacy, it might help, in the sense that it's harder to just improve something you kind of have halfway through, because like in the US, we have a lot of things that are sort of working. So instead of just start, maybe that gives you kind of leapfrog, or is it something else that creates the kind of vision?
It's I will tell you, having more of greenfield deployments and technology, of course it helps, but I will tell you, I think anybody, in my view, could have a vision. That's not a problem. There's plenty of visionary people, but a lot of the time, to drive vision to execution, this is the secret formula. This is a really, really secret formula, and it needs a significant number of ingredients to come together cohesively to deliver on this desire and this will. I mean, one of them is really just to have the will. And the will alone cannot just come from, hey, government saying, I will that this needs to happen and thus happen. Somehow, the people themselves was ready for this change. The society was ready to embrace new technology. The government has put a lot of incentives and a lot of frameworks to enable private-public cooperation to accelerate those transformation, and put enough incentives to say, look, if you do 1, 2, 3, I'm willing to put an incentivize and create subsidies program to aid you and enable you. So I don't think we should really give a lot of credit that the fact that there is no legacy system to deal with, but I would give a lot of credits around clarity, around government policies, government will and desire to execute on these visions, and also a partnership between public and private to accelerate industry adoption and create really a win-win scenario for everybody.
Yeah, and it's actually, and that's actually a difficult thing to do from a government point of view, because to have the sort of incentives aligned with goals,
Yes.
to make sure we get everything right. It's not, that is actually really, I would say it's more difficult than having a vision.
Yeah, I think, look, I think, putting incentives, of course, is a good asset, but how do you deploy these incentives in a meaningful way that delivers results? I think this is also a very tough science, by the way. This is not easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, why don't we talk a little bit more about what is that you're doing at Aramco Digital? We can then go all the other stuff, and also you guys in the audience ask questions, because we don't have a Q&A at the end. So this is your chance to enter your questions. So what is it you're doing? It's not, so you used to work at Rakuten Mobile operator, and well, you were doing that, but is that the same thing? What's different? What is it you're doing now?
No, it's
This is
yeah, I mean, I have to tell you,
okay.
it's
Can you just go and talk about Aramco Digital, and then we just go down, so that people might not be familiar with the whole.
absolutely. So let me I mean, obviously Aramco, more or less everybody knows this company is one of the world's largest in terms of what it does for oil and gas, doing really, really well in terms of our market position, shareholder commitment, revenue, value add. And one of the key things that Aramco is always looking at is what tomorrow might look like, and there are several diversification streams that the company is looking to evaluate. And one as I mentioned a bit earlier, in Aramco core businesses, the amount of digital platforms deployed to carry on day-to-day activity for its core business is just unbelievable, unbelievable. You would not think an oil and gas company would employ that much digital platform and AI into the fabric of what it does every day to deliver on top line results, efficiency, productivity, and that's that to me is just what a pleasant surprise. You know, as Aramco looks at tomorrow, what it might look like, of course, you have to be cognizant about what the future might hold for the company. The leadership team is always focused on you know, value maximization to its shareholders. And one idea, this was well before I came in, was talked about, is digital. And the reason digital was thought as an important thing, if you look at this Middle East in its entirety, there, you know, we have got to know the definition of hyperscalers, and we understand, by the way, what hyperscaler mean. But even though the word might not represent exactly the type of business they do, but it's scalable infrastructure, but they do more than scalable infrastructure. You know, the question came to mind, who can we think of as the Middle East industrial hyperscaler in digital platforms? And I really thought about this quite a bit, and I looked and scouted the market. And if I look at a definition in which a company that creates technology in the region, scale the technology across multiple vertical segments, understand the concept of data value chain from connectivity to cloud to data AI, cybersecurity, and other solutions, I couldn't really think of one large entity. I could think of many smaller things. So Aramco Digital was established as a wholly owned subsidiary to really pursue the dream, the vision, the desire to be the world's first industrial hyperscaler in the Middle East. And when we say what, you know, what this really constitute, for me, it's a company that's now on a pursuit to bring people, technology, and capability to build and advance new areas that you might not find in the market. And I'll spend a little bit of time to explain to you what we are doing that's exciting. But it's certainly much bigger. I mean, obviously, in my previous world and all what I've done in my life was all about telecom and connectivity. I would tell you, in my new world, connectivity takes a small portion of what I do. We have other ambitious things that we want to enable. A significant number of Aramco Digital ambitions revolve around cloud, data, and AI, and connectivity and other segments are nothing but application layers, enablers that we would require and need to run the business. So this is the original concept, by the way. Before I go into the business segment, I wanted just to brief you on is the why was very clear: diversification, new revenue stream. The reason, there is no one large hyperscaler that is a Middle Eastern company in the region today. The opportunity, the total addressable market in this region is massive, by the way. A lot of people underestimate the potential of digital platform solutions across Middle East, North Africa is significant. Although we're starting in Saudi Arabia, our ambition to go and look at the broader market as a whole.
But then, you know, there is no hyperscaler that it's based there, but you have the Google of the world. So are you going to be an alternative to them?
No, I mean, look, it's not just Google. I mean, I'll tell you, part of this is you think Google, Amazon, Microsoft, anybody and everybody that is of a large company, they're all coming here. You know, there is no doubt about it. But I do think that there are areas where we absolutely, by the way, collaborate and partner. And let me just dive on the approach. Aramco Digital was established now with 6 business unit segments. You know, one of them is Aramco Cloud. So in Aramco Cloud, our unique value proposition to the market is to say, look, there is no such thing that one cloud fits the requirement for all applications or for all enterprises or for all governments. What we have done, deployed and put into our production, we have a new marketplace called Nawat that basically, think about it as a multi-cloud orchestration marketplace that gives the end customer the ability to pick any cloud of choice you want. So you could say, I would like to host my application on Google Cloud. I would like to host on AWS, Microsoft, Oracle Cloud. For us, that is, we are agnostic to the underlying infrastructure. But at the same time, we have a sovereign cloud strategy for things, and whether it is governments, certain enterprises that needs that sovereignty requirement to be maintained, localized in the country, operated by local Saudi citizen. That's also an option. So within the cloud environment, in fact, we did a joint venture today through a company that's 51% owned by Aramco that brought Google to Saudi Arabia to build data centers in the country, and we inaugurated the opening of this. So it is not necessarily we're building equivalent technology to what already happened in the market. Frankly speaking, that just does not make sense. These companies have built decades and decades of software capability. But we do think a proper multi-cloud orchestration, a unified billing platform, and a sovereign cloud offering for specific workloads is something that makes sense for our cloud offering. So to that extent, we think that a partnership collaboration is absolutely possible. We have done it already with Google. By the way, we already onboarded Oracle Cloud, so I don't think this is an issue of saying, well, a hyperscaler exists in the West. Are you creating a hyperscaler of the same product catalog and services in the Middle East? And to me, that's not the case. Otherwise, I don't think success for us is really going to materialize to the position that we expect it to be.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting the way you look at it, that it's not just connectivity and it's not just one cloud. So I think that as we move forward on digitalization, we become a little bit more sophisticated in terms of what is that you need to do what. So we need to sort of think in a sort of broader mindset. Now, we have a couple of questions, so maybe you can address that and then go back to, what is it you're doing. So the first question from Ahmed is, how does Aramco Digital plan to influence 5G, 6G, and open and interoperable technology? Is Aramco plan to be Open RAN supplier? I mean, you obviously know everything about Open RAN. that's like inevitable that we have to talk about it somehow.
Yeah, it's almost like one of those things. No matter what I do, I think I have to be pulled into this space. I mean, I went to Mobile World Congress this year, and I didn't go really primarily to look at telecom specific solutions, but I wanted really to explain to everybody Aramco Digital approach to what we're doing. What I think, to be very frank with you, a lot of people never understood why I was passionately pushing the Open RAN architecture. And it finally starting to resonate in the marketplace that this is not just about quote, quote, open interfaces. This is not just about opening the, a CU vendor from vendor A DU vendor from vendor B, and doing that interoperability. I wanted to do a significant amount of work in top of Open RAN because I saw the elegance of the software platform. I saw what you could do to innovate, so the demos that we have done is to take a GenAI and to do basic things, to speak to a GenAI platform and say provision services. And then everything like magic happens, right? And that I was able to do just because of the flexibility of the software architecture of Open RAN, and people starting to say, okay, this makes sense. In the context of Saudi Arabia, we have no interest whatsoever to be in this consumer business. We are just focused on private 5G enablement, and we have massive use cases within Aramco itself and the industry. In fact, in the kingdom itself, a new auction has been released for industrial private 5G, where the regulators will issue spectrum that several companies are going to bid into the spectrum to operate this private 5G for industry use cases only. This is not a unified license agreement. So now for Aramco Digital, what I wanted to do is I'm inviting any Open RAN platform vendor to come in. We work and interoperate with anybody. I wanted to achieve one large objective in the kingdom. How do we train local Saudi citizens to be able to become tomorrow's developers for layer 1, layer 2, layer 3? That has never happened in this region whatsoever. So we partnered with Intel to do what we call the Open RAN Development Center. This is not system integration or IoT. So my objective at this stage is to fast track the acceleration and innovation on top of the Open RAN platforms. I think now there are really great companies. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm still biased that Rakuten Symphony has amazing technology stack. Mavenir is there, and many others that are doing really great work on this area. You know, I don't for us right now, I am really more focused on providing the platform of connectivity for private 5G and industrial, and building the training center in the Middle East, which is a long-term journey to really incubate and train local Saudis to know what is this L1 means, what is FlexRAN, what is the future architecture, what is hardware accelerators that are required and needed to run efficiently the workloads. It's a journey of training and knowledge development. So hopefully tomorrow, people will be much more educated on the choices they will have to do when they select vendors and components into the network. And I assure you that telecom network architecture is changing, and it will change fast to a more open, more software-centric, because there's no other way for future telcos to be able to compete and deliver on results without finding a fundamental architectural shift that improves on not just only on efficiency, but advancements and innovation on top of the connectivity layer.
Yes, and I think that this is, you know, really important, and it's more than just the frontal interface. But now let me ask you a specific question about private networks, because oftentimes you think about Open RAN as something that it's like for the public network.
Yeah.
But in private networks, this is what you always get the questions like, well, it's a, relatively speaking, a small network. Do you need it to be Open RAN? Do you need multiple vendors? My answer is, but what is your answer to that?
Well, I mean, I actually, so I will tell you a couple of things. I mean, I think everybody, yourself included, you know, we all look at these analyst reports and the forecast of, oh my God, private 5G network sales is going to be significant and massive. But very little people ask the question, why the adoption is slow? So it is not because of regulations, by the way. I don't think so, at least in my opinion. So in the US, the FCC have really spearheaded the CBRS spectrum. Well, it's all available. There is shared spectrum available, so the barrier to entry spectrum is not significant. With that being said, why the adoption has been slow when we talk to enterprise and private 5G? You know, I have a hypothesis. Maybe I'm right, or maybe I'm wrong about it, but enterprises that have worked in an IT environment, that have consumed Wi-Fi, have enjoyed a level of simplicity you will never find in a traditional telco deployment. In fact, you know, I talked to many startups, and I talked to a recent startup that Pankaj and John Chambers have started, Nile, and I was just talking to them about what they have doing differently on Wi-Fi, manage enterprise. And everything they talked about is just to say, our job is to build a network that the IT organization never have to think about management of this network. It just works, it self-heals, it does all the things that one might need, so at least IT infrastructure does not have to become a headache you have to worry about. And in private 5G, from the day, let's say you decide to deploy private 5G, to the day you commission it, if we're still talking about 6 months of process between ordering, surveying, planning, drive testing, commissioning, integration, and we don't think about the importance part, which is simplicity. So for us in Aramco Digital, what we decided to do is now we're creating an entirely new experience for network as a service concept driven by a marketplace. And the marketplace, I cannot take credit for it. I just looked at the Wi-Fi players. It's not just going to copy and paste what they've done. They must have done something right. So we're very focused on simplicity and making private 5G to the end user look identical to Wi-Fi. you do this, I think we might have a chance now to say, look, there's a lot of elegance that private 5G could bring to the enterprise. If the cost is right, if the ease of use is right, if operation is not as complicated as people could imagine it would be, then I would say we might change the paradigm. And so as it relates to Open RAN, at least in my opinion, there is no way I could enable what I want to do without extendable APIs that the CU-DU split architecture that I have will enable me, and the elegance of cloudification of the entire software layer. And keep in mind, for a private 5G, the demand on capacity, by the way, is not as much as public networks. So if the argument is, well, Open RAN is not ready, 3GPP feature parity is not ready, well, okay, maybe the private 5G is the segment that we should be putting a lot of our energy, but make it in a way that really make private 5G and Wi-Fi almost identical in ease of use and eventually in cost.
Yeah, no, I actually, I'm very glad to hear that, because oftentimes you just, a lot of even the vendors, they just say, this is 5G versus Wi-Fi and it's better or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And instead they kind of downplay the potential similarities. And I think that if you go to the enterprise and you say, well, this is something sort of like Wi-Fi, but it also allows you to do 1, 2, 3, I think that that's an easier, conceptually easier. Obviously it has to be not too complex. Because otherwise, if you are an enterprise and you have to think, oh my God, I have to get a core, I have to get.
Yeah, exactly. Think about it.
Like, oh my God.
I have Wi-Fi network, I have 5G network. Now I have to manage 2 networks. Just think about it. I think there is a path of simplicity to achieve desired objective where everybody, including vendors and even companies like Aramco Digital and the likes, could really benefit from the cultivation of an ecosystem to drive convergence. I think both technologies have a value to play. Wi-Fi, for a majority of the applications, is fine. Private 5G, if you look at industrial use cases where you really could do truly, can you imagine? We've been talking about network slicing for how long? Come on, I really don't think a network slicing use case for consumer has any benefit. If you really want to enable a private 5G implementation, then 5G will flourish because there is a clear use case that shows the elegance of this technology that to date has been not really deployed to its full capability.
Yeah, but actually on a private network, if you control everything, you don't necessarily need slicing. You can
I'm referring to, think about it this way. If you go into an operational plant, and for whatever reason, there's a machinery that requires ultra sensitive latency. The point is there is a way to do this without differentiated billing, by the way. So the idea of network slicing is good, and people thought, oh, hey, let me just start charging differentiated billing based on slice. I also would say, well, you've taught the consumer and the enterprise for almost 30 years of their life to pay fixed fees. Now you're going to teach them how to pay on a per slide basis. I don't know, good luck. I don't see how that's going to work.
Yeah, and if you have your own network, you don't have any billing. So you again, it just reduces the complexity by taking things that you don't really need. Right?
Correct.
Okay, so let's just go back to the questions here. So there is a question from Shiv about the upcoming auction, and this was before you start talking about it. And so his question is, you answered half of it, but the other one is, beyond energy, what are the specific verticals that are more likely to adopt 5G?
You look at the requirements of this auction, by the way, is not to only serve the energy sector, but really look at the industry as a whole, and this will cover a gamut of verticals. If whether it is mining, shipping, anything that is outside of consumer business, the requirement and the mandate within this auction is contained. By the way, this document is public, so anybody could access and read the content of it. I really commend the CST and the regulators in Saudi Arabia to have the foresight to say, that we could create a new segment. A private 5G specific spectrum to address industrial use cases touching multiple verticals, I think has a tremendous potential.
So is that similar to CBRS?
It is, it's done, it's not necessarily. CBRS is a shared spectrum. This one will be whoever wins this auction will have the mandate to serve the captive demand of the industry. But that's the license is very, very specific. This is, again, not like unified license, but a very, really specific on verticals, and it will touch, of course, oil and gas.
But is it like a national license or is it just a location-based?
National license.
That's, yeah, I think that's going to be very interesting because it's a different approach to CBRS than what you see in Europe.
Yeah, and also the spectrum is, there is a 450 megahertz alliance. It is part of that spectrum, which will have really a big, wider reach. It's very good for IoT use cases. I think it's a great start for this. So the process of bidding and document gathering has just started now, part of this auction.
Now, there is another question sort of on the same line from John on what does the regulator in Saudi Arabia think of these audacious plans? And is there a closer relationship between regulator and operators in Saudi compared to Japan, India, or USA?
I mean, I'll tell you from my point of view, I noticed here far more closer discussion, dialogue, and collaboration between government and private businesses, much more than I have seen any time before, by the way. There's a significant number of discussions that happened, and also sharing openly about key topics that is really for the benefit of the country as a whole. So, I mean, I would tell you, generally speaking, again, it's one of those surprise things about is how open and how accessible regulators and government agency has been to at least meet with me, dialogue, discuss, opportunities for innovation, collaboration. That is definitely different, very, very different. So this concept of private-public partnership and really involving a consortium where the government leads and hosts calls with operators or even people like Aramco Digital is definitely, I've seen this and I've seen it in action, really. It works very well.
Absolutely. So great to hear that. Now, let's talk a little bit about your announcement about Nour. Is that I'm pronouncing it right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so can you tell us a little bit about what that is? And actually, what I'm curious is about the role of AI that plays into that. Because now, whatever you do, that you have to get.
So, I mean, maybe I'll tell you, if Open RAN was my passion or my area of dream in my previous world, AI and data now is the new thing that I am obsessed about. And I'm obsessed about it for different reasons. There's no doubt that GenAI is kind of cool. You talk to something and it almost sounds like a human the way it responds to you. So I'm captivated by the dialogues that you could carry on with ChatGPT. But when you look at the enterprise, to just simply say I want to implement ChatGPT, actually, to me that is not where the clear use case to deliver on the productivity efficiency that one would need. So in Aramco Digital, my first day on the job, I met with a HR head, and I was asking Diana, how many employees we have? She took a day, she came back, and she gave me a number. And I said, can you explain to me, what did you do? Why it took a day? So, and give you a background that I was told that we have deployed the state-of-the-art ERP systems. We have like cutting-edge platforms. So, then a light bulb came to my mind. I said, okay, there is a clear use case for GenAI. One of the ideas I had is, the mouse that we all used and loved for a long time was invented in 1968. With the invention of the mouse, icons and on a Windows, whether it's a Mac or Windows, appeared. The icons became prettier over time, became faster, became more feature-rich, but it's still icons on the desktop. My desktop now, as I'm talking to you, is cluttered with icons. So, I thought, is it plausible to replace these icons with just a prompt? But the prompt is different than ChatGPT prompt. a prompt that has enough intelligence to understand your intent, carries actions, and provide the user the responses according to intent to action. So in the case of HR, if I'm able to train on my own HR data sets with my own HR guidebook and interlink a new operating system with my backend systems, then a hypothetical scenario would be, I would go to Nour OS. Nour, by the way, in Arabic means light. So the new enterprise operating system is a prompt only. There's no icons, there's no applications. You will not see this. You just see a prompt. You could declare and say how many vacation days I have. Nour OS will respond based on the trained model, based on your document or HR guidebook. Then you would say, please submit vacation for 35 days, for example. And then dynamic workflows will be created. It goes to the backend system. And if you are in the other side, the recipient, you would get a notification, but you would get into the prompt and approve. Apply the same thing for an NDA. Generate an NDA and do it now in minutes, not 3 or 4 or 5 days. So what we did with Nour OS, we have interlinked the entire ERP platform systems in an enterprise. We have started the journey of making the world less complex on how an employee consumes applications. And this is, to me, the case of an AI that understands intent and from intent to actions. The actions is a secret sauce. So when I declare submit vacation, in this context, our intelligent controller must understand what was the intent. It has to have the underlying API hooks with the systems of records, extract this data, submits the workflows, gets the necessary approvals, and so on and so on. So Nour OS, for us, it's a new generation of an enterprise operating system. It is application agnostic. By the way, the same platform, in Leap, we demoed it for HR, finance, legal. I demoed Nour OS provisioning an entire infrastructure for cloud, in seconds. The construct of the application layer is agnostic, but the idea and the concept is, again, it's one of those big, audacious visions. I'm not underestimating the challenge. Can we not have icons that we click on to manage our day-to-day work? And if you think about the call that we're on today, what would happen, Monica, if you and I don't have to send a Zoom link anymore? You speak to something, and you speak to Nour OS and say, send a Zoom link, and it just magically happens and it gets orchestrated. A link is sent, and our email system could be, hey, anything important I should respond to? I think this is where we start to see benefits of AI much more than being sometimes like a therapist, give me this, give me this. Like, it sounded too good, the way that it speaks. So this is probably, like, for me, honestly, the biggest product platform that I'm betting a lot on. I'm betting that the AI that will be created with clear use cases on a new operating system for the enterprise, Nour OS, we think it's a game changer. We think it just did not happen to the way that we're embedding it into the enterprise and the way that we are interlinking all these systems and ensuring simplicity to intent, dialogue to execution. I think this is a really big differentiator. It requires a big philosophical thinking, by the way, because now this is a new user interface. There is a desktop with no applications. This is new. There's just a browser, and the browser have a prompt. It will require a little bit of time to really assess the value and the impact of how we engage in the work environment. And I'm starting, honestly, the transformation in Aramco Digital first. As soon as end of the year happen, we'll be GA ready, and I will take it to the rest of the markets to assess also, do they see the benefits the same way that we see it here?
Now, this is really interesting. Now, if I understand it correctly, it's just basically what you're trying to do is to add intelligence to the other end. Because with ChatGPT, you just like, you got all the input, all the data, you use it and you spit out something. But that's not very filtered. You don't, it's kind of like, so what? It's just too much. And then you have a way to apply intelligence on the other end as well.
Exactly.
Now, let me ask you then, the sort of follow-up question is, how does that relate to the existing language models and to things like prompt engineering?
So the cool thing, if I show you the platform architecture of NeurOS, we are not reinventing the wheel. That is the awesome thing. So a lot of hard work has happened on large language models. We take whatever open source variant of the large language model, and we have options, by the way, that is customer choice, not my choice. You could say, I would like to use the LLM of OpenAI commercial enterprise model. I would like to select Meta open source model. I guess the LLMs themselves for us is a bit irrelevant. A customer might say, I want the entire LLM to be on-prem for data privacy, security, and integrity, and our platform will also support this. But we don't create the LLM. But we do the work, I think that we do, the two major differentiation items that we do is the fine-tuning of the LLM to the model. So for example, in telco, if I say, show me drop call, well, someone must understand what does drop call means and how does this drop call has the correlation with the right counter in the background to extract this data to display the right value. So we do the training on the fine-tuning on these custom LLMs, extract the larger language models. Someone else is doing all the hard work. God bless them. That's really good. And then we invest a lot of our IP and energy into this intelligent orchestrator. That is where the heart of our platform is. How to understand the dialogue comes from LLM, but translating the dialogue into action is the part that we invested a lot of energy on.
So you have the orchestrator, and the orchestrator, I guess, is kind of not specific to an application, to a vertical, or to a use case. But then the enterprise wouldn't customize it so that you don't have kind of general.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't.
basically,
I mean, what I'm saying, like the kind of data you want to train it on is going to be related to whatever the enterprise is doing.
So
you don't need to.
If you take the example of HR, each enterprise have their own manual and guidebooks and guidelines. So the only customization you would need is we need to train the AI on your specific data sets.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But the
Yeah.
orchestration layer doesn't really care about, this training that has happened before. It is really meant to, I'll tell you what it has. It has also some really cool stuff into it. We started to really put guardrails. Like, let's say if you want to talk about, if an enterprise says, look, employees should not ask the AI about politics, for example. We have guardrails that we put constraints about what you can and cannot do also within this AI. We don't just open it completely because this is an enterprise domain that has sets and regulations and requirement, and we work within the enterprise on those needs and requirements. So we are, by the way, on platform build, we're almost done, and it has amazing components. Now we're in the process of use case development, and I'm focused on HR first, and then I'll go to finance, legal, and so on. And I'm soliciting partners and collaborators that are really intrigued and interested to see what we're working on. We will select one or two enterprises to promote this in, that we do co-development on to validate the impact of deployment of NeurOS into their enterprise.
And so this is GenAI. What about on the AI side? Is that relevant, or is it mostly GenAI that you're?
No, right now, mostly what we did in this aspect is GenAI. But within also NeurOS, by the way, we have a machine learning workbench. We have all of the data science capability enabled because for me, the fact of the matter is, there will be a requirement that would come through where you would need to develop algorithms. You need to open this up to enable third-party plugins and integration. So we took into consideration, by the way, a considerable number of use cases also for AI. But today, my focus is really just to drive GenAI implementation. AI will come through if there are specific requirements on maybe, take a computer vision model, right? Require actually AI and a specific algorithm to be built. Those are capability-wise, module-wise, are enabled into the platform, but someone else have to come in and plug them in or build them.
Absolutely. So, okay, this is actually, let me ask you a very final question. So what about using this for like more telecom specific applications? I don't know.
Well, we did the same thing, by the way. I really, hopefully one day you would do also another one of those interviews with Intel. and
Mhm.
ask him what we have done in 30 days with Intel on telecom. I mean, to me, it was a no-brainer, clear use case. Take a very simple low-hanging fruit, which is how do we provision an entire telecom infrastructure by voice commands? And you should probably ask Intel their view before and after, because I might have a biased opinion. They will give you a more of their perspective of what they had before with their Bevel Lake platform and what we have done together with them to do a demo in less than 30 days.
Absolutely. Well, Tareq, thank you so much. Kendra, over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. That will conclude our webinar for today. Thanks to Tareq and Monica for that great conversation, and thanks to our audience members for those questions. A recording of today's webinar will be made available at sensafili.com in the coming days. And we have one upcoming Sparring Partners on AI, ML, and Gen AI, and that will be, the registration for that will be available soon on the sensafili.com website. Thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you at future events.